am going to start off with a little song, and this is a George Gershwin tune, and I actually modified it just to make it a unity tune, and I'm sure he would be fine with that. So it's just a little message. Maybe I should get my notes just because I did modify it. Maybe I don't have my notes.
George Gershwin.
Yeah. Yay. So this song, then we should say, is co-written by George Gershwin and Karen Gray.
Okay. Nice. There you go. Yeah.
It ain't necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so. The things that you're liable to read in the Bible ain't necessarily so. Now Jonah, he lived in a whale. You know Jonah, he lived in a whale. Yeah, he made his home in that fish's abdomen. Jonah, he lived in a whale. But it ain't necessarily so. Little David was small, but oh my. Little David was small, but oh my. He fought big Goliath, who lay down and died. Little David was small, but oh my. It ain't necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so. You got to be gleaning metaphysical meaning. Otherwise it ain't necessarily so. It ain't it ain't necessarily so. Woo! Yeah. All right. That was just for you.
I love it.
Beloveds. My wonderful minister mentor, Reverend Lafayette Seymour, used to begin his sermons like that, with beloveds. And I told him, not that he was looking for my approval, but I told him that I thought that was the perfect way to begin a sermon, because you never know what's going to happen. And suppose suddenly somebody has to leave, or there's a fire drill, or something like that. You've gotten the most important thing out with your first word.
Mm-hmm.
The message that we are all beloved. We are all beloved. We are fully beloved, always beloved. And it's nice to get that reminder. And I think that's the highest truth I know, that we are one with the essence of love. We are fully loved. So, beloveds, it's a privilege to be invited to share some thoughts with you. It takes me a lot of preparation to do this, to tell you the truth. I spend time sitting down with my thoughts, trying to come up with something that's meaningful for me that might be meaningful for you. And it's funny that something that seems like such a solitary activity, to sit down and write a message, I know I don't do it by myself. I couldn't. I am guided, and I keep reminding myself to look to the guidance I receive from so many helpers, mortal and otherwise, who make themselves available to me. And I think that this is the highest truth I know, that we are never on our own, that help is always at hand. Now, in order to receive that help and that guidance, I have to make myself reachable. And that means that I have to kind of quiet down, still myself a little bit. We have many resources, many wonderful sermons and books and teachers, but those are worldly crutches in a way, because we all have direct access to wisdom and to guidance, all that we need. And those great tools, and my bookshelves are full of them, right? They're great. But they can't become the crutch. They can't become the only way, because what we want is to be still and access the kingdom within, to allow ourselves to just be with that, and to allow ourselves to not keep thinking that we're reaching outside for something, but to know that what we need is here. And I actually work pretty hard at that. I think that the most productive of all activity, the most amazing of all activity, is to be.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be. It's the one that seems like nothing. But there's nothing that's more miraculous than to just be. What greater thing could you accomplish? And in that being, we find that still small voice. Now, I would like for that still small voice to speak up a little, because I am apparently hard of hearing and very busy and distracted. And I often totally miss out. And I just become completely oblivious to the fact that there is a still small voice. And I fret and I worry and I wonder and I weigh pros and cons and I debate. And I forget that there is a source of wisdom available to me. Why do I treat the still small voice as a special guest for special occasions?
Right.
It's always there. And I know the perfection of that embrace when you get that, oh, right, I don't have to figure it out all myself. What would it take to change that, for me to be just more readily, eagerly, willingly available? I kind of think, I suppose, that if my days were numbered, if somebody said, you only have 6 months to live, or whatever, if I know I were dying, then I would probably get really careful. And I would probably get really attentive and start paying attention. Now, I am not afraid of dying. I actually kind of, in this, unity way, kind of love the idea. I think it sounds exciting, this cool transition. I love change. And no, I like living. I like living a lot. So I'm totally on board. Things keep working out, so I'm here. But I'm just, loving life doesn't mean it has to go on forever. It can mean you just love being here. But knowing that our days will end, because it turns out my days are numbered, right? I just don't know the number. And it might be a big number. I don't know. But if I know that my days are numbered, then that's a good motivation for me to not procrastinate and not wait, and to really do what is mine to do. In whatever time I have left, I want to do what is mine to do. Seems like perfect formula for life. We don't want to imagine we have endless time, because then we won't get our stuff done. Now, I no longer, because I'm not, afraid of death, I used to get on airplanes and have that moment of, oh my God, what if this plane goes down, right? And I really don't do that anymore. That's kind of how I know that I'm no longer afraid of dying, because I just don't worry about it anymore. And I wrestled with this. It was a little over 20 years ago when my dad died. And that didn't make any sense, because suddenly this strength, this comfort, this personality, this sense of humor, this intelligence that I had grown to count on for all those years was just not there anymore. That didn't add up. So I started asking the question, which was, where is he now? Where is my dad now? Because I knew that just didn't make sense, that could simply disappear. So that's when I started my inquiry. Where is my dad now? And through that, started finding the communities and the materials and the teachers and the information. And through that, I finally came to understand. I came to a way of understanding, oh, right, just as I suspected. Dad is still here. It's just different. Life is eternal. That's what that means. And that was definitely the kickoff to my spiritual journey and the turning point in a big way in my life. In a lot of ways, I look at my life as before Dad died and after Dad died. And I see all that came after Dad died as my dad's way of continuing to be the best father he could be for me, because he, in dying, was prompting me towards some really important learning that has meant a lot to me. So this might be the highest truth I know, that life is eternal. That means no beginning, no end. It just is. It is that being. And there's nothing to be afraid of. There are just milestones A good friend of mine who's an LUT suggested to me that when I'm going to speak for a community, what he says to everybody, speak to the highest truth you know. And I was like, yeah, as though that simplifies it, because he's super, super smart and has studied everything, and he's spent all these years as a teacher, teaching like philosophy and stuff, and so for him that might make it easy, but for me it's like, no, that's not what the rest of us do. Because what we do, a lot of us, what we do is we don't speak to the highest truth we know, we speak to the most confounding question we have. The thing we don't know, the thing we are trying to figure out, because that being invited to speak gives me a prompt to sit down with my thoughts and write things down and then scratch them out and then start over again and try to figure something out. That wrestling is the privilege of being a minister and being invited to speak, because I'm like, gotta figure out what I want to say. That means I gotta figure out, what do I think? So, as was mentioned in my intro, I discovered Unity, and it was in March it'll be 20 years when I discovered Unity.
Wow.
And I literally, truly, really did. And I went there as a singer, I went there to sing. And then I was like, nothing got on my nerves here. And I've been going to different churches throughout my life, trying to find something. And I would always find something I liked, but something else that got on my nerves. So my minister mentor was Reverend Lafayette Seymour. And he had a big reputation for us there. And he had a deep spirituality. I was just discovering Unity for the first time, and at that time, I was just about to finish my seminary studies at an interfaith seminary to be an interfaith minister. And like many people in my seminary class, I had a lot of imposter syndrome about calling myself a minister.
Yeah.
But I was very...
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. But I was very comfortable and, clear that it was interfaith that I wanted to go, because I had found so many things that I valued and appreciated in different faith traditions, but not one that in and of itself kind of gave me what I wanted. But then I walked in, I found Unity, and Reverend Seymour was up there speaking. Maybe it was my second or third time that I had attended what was then called Community on the Hill. And this big man with a deep, gentle voice got up to speak, and I thought he had Southern Baptist preacher written all over him. And because that's what I was recovering from. Okay, and so and that was his origin, as a matter of fact. That was his origin. But he that day was giving tribute to a friend of his from Pakistan, and he opened up with a prayer to Allah. And he wore a bracelet with like the Om symbol. And he would make references to the Kabbalah, which when he was studying at Unity Village, he was off in the village with other folks teaching the Kabbalah. And I watched this man who was so filled with love and light, and I realized that is an interfaith minister. That is an interfaith minister, because religions had always served a purpose, but I was very resistant to sets of rules and regulations and boundaries and acceptance or non-acceptance. None of that worked. But getting to see Lafayette, I realized that while I was busy dismissing major schools of thought because of the things I didn't appreciate, and I was seeing them as full of corruption and so human run, he was finding the beauty in each of them and just finding a way and an opportunity to share that beauty with whoever was lucky enough to cross his path. He knew and he demonstrated that there is one presence. I love that that's the principle of the day today, the first principle. There is one presence and one power. He took every truth, actually, and he made it higher and bigger and memorable and fun and comforting. I remember him affirming all that I need, require, and desire. And I was like, man, the word desire right there in a prayer. You don't hear that in a lot of churches, right? Desire. The bad stuff. There was also some complexity to Reverend Seymour. Some truths, kind of easy. They just flow by you and you take them. They're easy. Other truths, as they flow by you, you got to go, wait, what? What? They make you sit up and pay attention and wonder and really take notice. He liked to open up a talk at a funeral or memorial service by standing up front and starting with, "You cannot die." And he actually liked that it would make people a little uncomfortable and startled. And I don't do that. Leading memorial services is maybe one of my favorite things to do, but I have a whole different approach because I'm just thinking, bring comfort, bring comfort. But you couldn't be uncomfortable with Lafayette. Even if he said something startling, he just evoked trust right away. He was 100% authentic, and he wanted to convey the most deeply comforting message and truth, which is that we are eternal beings, that love is eternal, that love is our essence, and that love goes on in spite of appearances. We are all truth seekers, and this particular truth, that the physical body is a vehicle and an instrument to be loved and appreciated, but that life is on a whole different level. Maybe that's the highest truth I know. Truth is universal and also absolutely personal. I often reflect on Unity's early identity as a school of practical Christianity, not as an institution to tell you when you're right and when you're wrong. Unity teachings they celebrate and support exploration and growth and discovery. And Lafayette used to cite that Charles Fillmore said, "I reserve the right to change my mind."
Yes.
And there's a lot packed into that, right? So, I just picked out a few things that are packed into that one statement. I reserve the right to change my mind. First of all, it means we are growing. We change our minds because we come to new understandings. And this is the way that we personally evolve and have an ongoing process, life of discovery. Second, it tells us that the truth resides within us. We change our minds because we have a clarity that only happens within, not because somebody else told us a different truth and we take that on. We are all responsible to seek and reach our own understandings. And when a story is told, it's going to mean one thing to you and a different thing to me, and we're both right. And then the third thing is that truth is in the present moment. Because you know what? I might hear a story today and then hear it again tomorrow, and it means a different thing to me tomorrow because it's evolving. And that's what we want. We don't want to dig in our heels when we find the truth and say, "That's it, I have arrived." We don't want to be rigid. We want to keep on moving, keep on growing, allowing for new discovery. One more thing about Lafayette. One day I asked him, "Lafayette, if you could only give one more sermon ever, what would be the topic?" And it was a rhetorical question. I knew what he was going to say. I knew that, of course, he would say love, because what else is there? And it was just my lead up to the next question I was going to ask. So I just said to him, "Lafayette, if you could only give one more sermon ever, what would be the topic?" And he said, "Forgiveness." And I said, "Oh." But then I came to understand it's because, love is the essence of it all, but forgiveness gives us the way to love when we've lost that way, when that way has been blocked for us. When we can fully forgive ourselves, others, our circumstances, when we can truly forgive what doesn't seem to be working for us, then we are being unconditionally accepting of God. Then we are not micromanaging or judging God's work. We're accepting divine order. We are residing in love and truth. Remember, we were not born bitter. We were not born bitter. So sometimes in the course of our life, after that birth, right? Sometimes we can pick up a grudge or a resentment. But that's not a natural state. If we hang out there, we're hanging out in an unnatural state. Forgiveness is a return to normal. And only through forgiveness can we be present for the essence of love that is what we are, the essence of life, the essence of God. Then we are present with that true essence. I started preparing this message thinking about what is the highest truth I know, and it wasn't easy, as you can tell, because I didn't pick one. And I thought, well, you know what though? Unity didn't either. We have 5 basic principles, not one.
Yes.
It's hard to encapsulate all that foundation in just one statement. But we can. If we really want to, we can. And it is the first principle. God is all there is. There is one power and one presence. Because if we get that one, everything else really is an extrapolation. That life is eternal is an extrapolation of the fact that God is all there is. God is not a powerful being. God is power itself.
Right.
God is not a beneficent ruler. God is beneficence itself. God is not a loving creator. Say it for me.
God is love
itself.
And He is creation.
And when we realize that God is all there is, oh, it's hard because our senses tell us otherwise, but we know we don't just always count on our senses. If I count on my senses, my 5 senses, then I am sure this world is flat.
Yeah.
But I know otherwise because that's been already established. So I learn to override, what my senses are telling me because I know the truth is something else. And so we can all seem like separate entities, but we actually know because we have reached the truth and we keep reaching for it. We are all one. There is only one essence, and that is God. And when we get that, in those bright shining moments when we get that, then we are liberated from the idea that God is some separate entity that we might be apart from, who might be absent to us at some times, right? Because if we remember that God is all there is, that means I am completely saturated by God and God is completely saturated by me. It's just the one presence. It's challenging. It might be overwhelming to behold all of these aspects of God in just a single characterization, a single concept. There's so much to it. And some faith traditions grapple with this in this way by having lots of different gods. Like the Hindu tradition, all these different gods, right? And I think some of the Native American traditions too, lots of different gods. But it's not that they are believing in many, many gods, it's that they're knowing that there are many aspects to God, and it's kind of too much for our little human minds to conceptualize. So we focus on an aspect, an aspect, an aspect. Just as today in my talk, I'm focusing on aspects of God. That we are fully loved, that life is eternal, that God is all there is, that we are never alone. These are different aspects of God, and it's helpful to focus on one at a time when it's overwhelming to try to conceive of the fundamental truth, which is that there is only one power and one presence active in the universe and in my life, God the good. God is all there is. It is hard, but it can be done. And we do it, and we keep practicing. And one of the ways we do it is through meditation. And why don't we go into a meditation now? I'm going to lead and invite you to sing with me as you choose Our Thoughts, Our Prayers. This will be a lightly guided meditation. I'll share some truth statements. I also invite you to call to mind the truth statement that works the best for you, whether I say it or it's something else you just already know or you get. And just really hang out with that truth statement for a minute. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Take charge of what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness. A state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes a prayer. And let your physical body be comfortable now. Relax. Even adjust a little if you want to become 5% more comfortable. yourself with that God consciousness. And as you exhale, know that you are releasing love into the world. Know that in this present moment, all there is right now. You are completely safe and right where you ought to be. And as I read these statements, I invite you to let them be yours. There is only one presence and one power, active as the universe and as my life, God the good. My essence is of God, therefore I am inherently good. I find within me the source of all that I need, require, and desire. I'm willing to be of service, and I offer myself as an instrument of peace, truth, and healing. Each day is a precious opportunity for me to know and express more of my divine nature. Let's take a little time in silence now. Now we collect up all these little elements of truth, embrace them, be embraced by them, hold them dear, and we affirm these truths, and we'll carry them with us as we go forward.